Hi everyone, I'm Steven.
大家好，我是 Bernice.
Welcome to Enjoy English School. Today's date is June the 29th. For the next 2 days, we're going to be covering pages 60 to 63 with destination.
我们今天要进入到要去旅行了，行遍天下。
What to see and do in Cairo.
好，我们今天要介绍的呢是开罗这个地方。那到底呢，在开罗有哪些我们可以去这个观光去看的，还有做的事情呢？
Okay, this article is by Daniel Howard, and it's called, the subtitle is Cairo's Grand Egyptian Museum is packed with history and culture.
哇原来今天我们要讲的是开罗呢，它有一个非常大型的这个 grand 的这个意思就是非常壮丽宏伟的一个这个埃及博物馆。那里面呢充满着 be packed with 就充满着很多的历史呢跟文化。
Okay, let's get started. With thousands of years of history and culture, Egypt has one of the world's best-known ancient civilizations.
我们都知道这个埃及的历史呢也是非常的悠久，所以呢他一开始就讲了有着好几千年的历史跟文化。那么埃及呢它其实呢有着世界上面呢最著名的 best known 就是最著名的一些古文明其中之一。
Right, so best known, you could also say one of the world's most famous, ancient. Ancient, this adjective, let's look at that word first. Even though it has a C, it's not ancient, okay? It's ancient, like CH sound, okay? Ancient, and it means very, very old, okay? And what is a civilization? It's a society or culture or way of life from, it can be from the past or it can be now. It's just collectively this whole society.
就是我们在讲整个社会的从过去到现在的一个背景，所以呢它是一个混合在一起的，所以我们就直接把它翻成这个文明世界。
However, the former Egyptian museum was built over 100 years ago and has had few upgrades since then.
其实它之前呢就是已经有博物馆了，可是所以你看它一开始的时候是说因为他们要在讲这个古埃及的这个历史之所以这么样的悠久，而且有这么样著名的文明，可是呢其实他们以前的 the former 就是前任的之前的这个埃及的博物馆其实已经建立了，然后那个时候建立的时间已经超过了100年之久了，而且呢一直以来 has had 因为从100年之前到现在一直以来呢非常非常少。同学你看到这个 few 这个字是指很少很少，少到几乎没有了这样的任何一个 upgrade 我们都知道是提升的意思。好，所以这边就是说都很少很少再往前跨一步的意思。 Since then 就自从那个时候100年前开始基本上没有什么样的这个升级的感觉。
So here we see the word Egyptian. Okay, so anything that's from Egypt is Egyptian. Okay, and then Egyptian museum is capitalized because it's the name of the museum.
没错。
So pay attention to that. And was built over 100 years ago. You could also say was built more than 100 years ago. That's also acceptable. It didn't even have air conditioning. Ugh.
当时因为100多年前嘛，你要说那个时候能够有很多的什么家电或科技，那基本上是不太可能的。所以在那当时，所以他用 it didn't 就是在那个时候100多年前的时候，甚至呢你说里面要有一些空调设备，那当然也是不可能的事情，所以没有什么空调设备。
Wow, I can't imagine life before AC.
对
Absolutely.
如果外面摄氏40度以上，可能在里面我们就像在烤自己一样的感觉。
Right, but Egypt is like surrounded by desert.
没错啊，
So,
那
can you
边本来
imagine?
就热，我不行，我进去我可能就昏倒在那边了。
Right, so air conditioning, a lot of times we will shorten that to AC. So you could say it didn't even have AC. Okay. The Grand Egyptian Museum is a great leap forward, both as a tourist attraction and as a conservation effort.
所以呢他们现在出现了这样的一个比较大的更加大型的这样的一个埃及的博物馆。那在这个埃及来说确实呢就是相当跨了一大步，这个 leap 原本就是指我们讲这个 大跳跃的意思，跳过去的意思，所以这边就说跨了一大步。Forward 当然是往前跨，谁会往后跳呢？对不对？然后不管是在哪两个方面，同学你可以看到 both， 然后用 and 来连接，所以就是把前面这个跟后面这个加在一起。不管呢今天这一个大的埃及博物馆呢是当做我们所谓的观光客的景点，或者是当做这个所谓的环保自然环境里面保育的一份努力里面，它同时呢都往前大大的跨了一步。
Yes, so tourist is 游客. Attract, let's look at that word attraction. Attract is the verb form, okay? That means to get people to come to this thing, okay?
吸引这些人来。
Yeah, 吸引他们. So attraction is a thing or a place that makes everybody want to go see it.
我们就翻景点。
Yes, like Taipei 101 is an attraction of Taiwan because everybody comes to Taiwan and they want to see it. Okay, and conservation, when you want to conserve something, that means you're trying to keep it the way that it is. You don't want it to break. You don't want it to go away. You're trying to conserve it. So conservation effort is you're trying really hard to make sure that this thing stays intact and it doesn't break.
就是让一个东西保持它原本的完整如初的那个感觉。这时候我们就用到它的那个动词，叫做保育、保存的意思。
The Grand Egyptian Museum, which has been under construction since 2012, is the largest archaeological museum in the world.
所以这一个大埃及博物馆呢，其实它自从2012年就已经开始动工了。所以你看它这边加了这个 which， 然后加了逗点，别忘记，因为你前面的这个大埃及博物馆是全世界就只有这么一间，所以你一定要加上一个逗点。那这一间博物馆呢，它其实一直以来从2012年就不断的在 under construction， 就是在被建造底下，意思就是说一直在建造之中。而且呢，它也是世界上面呢最大型的，我们讲到这个所谓的这个很长的这个字 archaeological, right? 考古学的这个博物馆。
It's a very difficult word to say. So the main sentence is, the Grand Egyptian Museum is the largest archaeological museum in the world. So whatever is between the commas is just extra information. Okay, it's not necessarily the main point of the sentence, which is why it has commas separating it from the rest of the sentence. Okay, so here we see the year 2012. You could also say 2012.
没错。
Both of these are acceptable. Let's look at the word archaeological, that super long word.
对，超长的一个字。
So let's learn the word archaeology first. Okay, archaeology is the study of the human past by looking at materials that remain now.
对，就是我们在研究以前人类的一些东西，所以我们就翻成考古学。
So the noun form is archaeology. Okay, but the adjective has like an extra O, so it goes archaeological, like that. That's a difficult word.
对，没错，真的，连他们 native speaker 都念得怪怪的。
It is such a freaking long word. Archaeological. Archaeological. Okay, 这样子。Okay. Between the main complex and the surrounding grounds, the museum takes up around 480,000 square meters and houses some of Egypt's most precious treasures.
果然非常非常的大呀，所以才会用到这个 grand 这个字，对不对？所以他说，在这一个大的埃及博物馆里面呢，它的 main complex 就是它的主建筑的这个群。为什么用 complex？ 就是它有好多的这个 buildings 哈，所以它有很多的这个建筑在一起，一种复合式的，所以我们翻成一个建物群。在它的主要的这个建物群里面呢，还有它周遭的surrounding 就是它周遭的，还有周遭的这些场地呢，还有呢这个 museum 它整个呢 take up 的意思就是占据，它的占据的地有多大？大约呢是48万平方尺 square meters， 就是平方尺。而且呢，在这个大埃及博物馆里面呢，它 houses 这个字当动词，就是收藏了。它里面还藏有一些呢，这个埃及呢最珍贵的一些珍宝在里面。
So it's a very long sentence, but it has a lot of really good information. So when we say surrounding grounds, that just means the surrounding areas. But when it's an area that belongs to a business or belongs to like a museum, that we say grounds to say that that area belongs to this museum.
对，因为它是属于它的一个建筑物里面的一个场地这样子。
And then here we see the word houses used as a verb. It's also another way just to say that it has some of Egypt's most precious treasures, or it holds some of Egypt's most precious treasures. And precious, this adjective here, could also use valuable or loved treasures. Okay, something that they really, really value.
对，很珍贵的意思。
Okay, let's take a short break. In fact, the museum will exhibit around 50,000 artifacts from throughout Egypt's long history.
事实上叫 in fact， 就是我们要强调呢，这个博物馆呢可能要做一些什么样的，就是他接下来会讲他要展览东西，所以事实上他要强调这个点，所以呢我们用到这个 in fact。这个 museum 呢即将会呢要去做展览，这个字 exhibit 这个字 h 这个字是没有发音的，它要展览出呢大约是5万件，好，非常重要的这一些artifacts 就是我们讲到以前的一些所谓的手工的这些制造的艺品啊文物啊，而且呢这些文物呢它展览的这个地点呢是整个贯穿所有埃及的一个长长的历史，意思就是说整个埃及呢这么多几千年的这个历史的这些文物它通通都会展览出来。
所以这个 in fact 其实它不是像其实很像它前面讲不对那种意思，而是要给你更多的资讯。
没错。
So in fact, the museum will exhibit. Another word you could use here is display. D-I-S-P.
展示。
D-I-S-P-L-A-Y. 展示 around 50,000 artifacts. What is an artifact? It is usually an object made by humans in history. Okay, so it's not, a natural occurring thing. It is like an artwork, or it is like an object that someone created in history.
对。
And here we could just say 50,000 artifacts from Egypt's long history, but we're adding the preposition throughout just so that we can kind of give more of a mental picture that it could be from anywhere within Egypt's long history, from the very beginning of the history or the very middle or the very end. So just trying to emphasize that it is throughout Egypt's long history.
对，这个介系词呢用的是一个非常非常仔细的一个介系词，因为这个字用下去呢，假设以埃及这边来看，它是几千年，所以它可能从它一开始的时候就整个的文物都会拿出来，然后中间可能挑一些，然后到埃及最后的这一些历史的文物都会挑出来，所以它用 throughout 整个贯穿的意思。
Collections will be relocated from museums in Cairo, Luxor, the Nile Delta, Alexandria, and many other significant locations around Egypt.
接下来下一个这个句子呢，就是告诉大家说，到底它的这一些所谓的这些文物到底是从哪来的呢？它的这些收藏品呢，将会呢 relocated， 就是重新把它安置在什么地方 ？From 是从原本其他的这个在埃及其他的一些 museum 里面拿来的。就包含呢哪一些地方的这个 museum 呢？包含开罗啦，还有路克索，还有这个尼罗河三角洲，还有呢这个亚历山卓等等这些地方，还有其他 many other， 还有很多其他的一些 significant， 就是比较重要的一些地点。那整个这些地点呢，全部都是在埃及的。
The main attraction, however, will be the full collection from Tutankhamun's tomb, including the child pharaoh's solid gold coffin.
哇，里面呢有一个呢主要的一个吸睛的地方的这个 attraction， 就是我们讲到最吸引大家的一个物品呢 however 然而就是说因为有太多了嘛，但它总是要点出里面有几个比较值得去看的，所以然而里面有一个最主要的吸引的物品呢，就是它是一个整个完整的一个收藏。那这个收藏是从哪来的呢？是从这个图坦卡门的这个 tomb 这个坟墓里面所这个 来的这个收藏。那这个坟墓里面的收藏包含什么呢？甚至包含他年幼还是小朋友的那个法老王的那一个纯金的棺木，就是他睡的那个就是拜拜的人睡的地方。
对，棺材嘛，right?
对，棺材。
Okay. So Tutankhamun, a lot of times people will just call him King Tut.Okay, King T-U-T, to make it easier to say, because Tutankhamun is a really long word.
没错。
So what is the difference between tomb and a coffin? A coffin is 棺材.
对。
A tomb is like, sometimes it's a building. Okay, it's not really where like the body could be there, but usually the body's in a coffin inside a tomb.
对，没错。所以那个棺材就是那个尸体躺的那个位置，有没有？那我们会把这个棺材要放在地底下里面嘛，所以这时候它就是一个墓。好，所以这时候叫 tomb， 所以这两个字其实是不一样。所以为什么我们讲扫墓节叫做 tomb sweeping day， 我们不会讲 coffin sweeping day， 你就只扫那个棺材。
Yeah.
Okay.
So tomb, even though it has a B, the B is silent.
对。
Okay, and a pharaoh is a ruler of ancient Egypt. Okay.
法老王。
法老王. So child pharaoh. So that means that he was still a child.
没错。
Okay, and then solid gold coffin. Why do we add the adjective solid? Because it's made entirely out of gold. Okay, it's made of real gold. There's no other fake stuff inside.
对，里面完全没有掺杂任何东西，是纯金的。
The project has not been easy though.
当然啦，同学，你要展览出这么多的这样的一些文物，这样的一个计划，当然不简单的。
So 这个 though, it could also be but the project has not been easy. One or the other, 不要两个都用。
啊，对，只能用其中一个。
With a cost of around US $1 billion in a country where many people are still very poor, some Egyptians have wondered if it's worth it.
对，为什么说这个是一个不是那么容易的一个计划呢？因为在埃及这个地方 with 有着它的这个怎么样 cost， 就是它这个花费。将近要花费多少？同学要花费10亿的美金。
哇！
可是呢，你却是在一个国家，这个国家大部分的人都非常的贫穷，那一口气光展览一个东西就要花这么多的钱，所以呢，有一些这个埃及人就开始呢一直在不断的想 wonder， 就是在那边猜测，在那边想说，真的你觉得这样的展览是 worth it 吗？是值得的吗
？And the project has been delayed repeatedly, most recently because of the coronavirus pandemic.
好，所以呢，这个计划因为这样的关系呢，所以一直不断的被耽搁，而且是 repeatedly， 就是一而再再而三的被耽搁，而且呢，甚至到了最近的时候 ，most recently， 就最近的时候呢，也是因为发生了这个新冠这个肺炎的关系呢，所以它就又被 delay 了。
So repeatedly, another adverb you could use is continuously. Okay, 一直持续不断的。So I want to talk about the word pandemic.
Okay.
It's not the main thing of the whole entire article, but I want to bring it up.
好。
So pandemic is an illness or a virus or some kind of disease that is widespread across the world.
没错。
If you see PAN, that usually means the whole world. Another word that we often see, because in Chinese it's all called 疫情.
对，没错。
But in English, they have different ways to categorize different types of 疫情. So when we see endemic, endemic, that means that it is an illness or a disease that is in one small area. Let's say that your building that you live in, people start getting sick. So only the people in that building have the sickness. So that is endemic. Okay, but if the whole country or just a whole area has this same 疫情, we call that an epidemic. Epidemic. Okay, and then once this disease or this illness leaves the country and goes to different countries, when it becomes international, that's when we call it a pandemic.
对，所以 pandemic 是最大的，它是全世界都在蔓延的一个全球性的一个疫情，然后慢慢的缩小到这个所谓的 epidemic，就是讲我们讲一个国家或其中几个国家可能有发生这样的事情，最后就是可能发生在某一个区域，或者是甚至就一个 building 里面发生这样的一个疫情。
像 SARS 那个时候是 a lot of Asian countries, right? 所以它
就是 epidemic，
它是 epidemic， 对，它是属于是一个区块，而不是整个世界。对，是有这样的分别。I think it's quite interesting. However, the government of Egypt has announced that the museum will be completed in mid-2021.
好，所以即使呢一直不断的被耽搁，可是所以 however、虽然是这样子，可是呢这个埃及的政府呢依旧已经宣布了，就是说呢这个博物馆呢即将会在2021年的中旬 mid 就是中间的时候呢就会完工了。
Right, so you can say 2021 or 2021. All right, let's go to the review.
好的。
All right, Bernice 老师，
是
what is a civilization?
好，我们就讲到人类的历史上面的文明。
Okay, and if I say let's take a leap forward, what does that
哇，
mean?
就是我们往前大跨一步啊。
Okay, it can be actually like really jumping,
对，
right?
你可以真的跳出去一大步。
But it can be also in like technology or in knowledge, right? It can be something abstract.
没错。
也可以是抽象的。Okay, what if something is under construction?
好，就是这个东西正在建筑之中。
And if this building takes up a lot of space, what do I mean by
就是它
take up?
占据了多大的一个范围。
Okay, and this office building houses many great employees. 这个 houses 是什么意思？
当动词的意思就是说它收藏了很多东西，或者拥有什么样的东西。
And if this place is exhibiting a lot of art, what does exhibit mean?
我们讲的是展出，展览的意思。
Okay, and if you do something and I say, is it worth it? What do I mean by is it worth it?
你做这件事真的值得吗？
And I might ask you this repeatedly. What does that mean?
他就会一直不断的在问我，真的值得吗？值得吗？值得吗？
Okay, 就持续一直做一件事情 repeatedly. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us. And today, tomorrow, we'll continue with this topic. So we'll see you then.
OK， 拜。
第60页，行遍天下，开罗停看听。
What to see and do in Cairo. With thousands of years of history and culture, Egypt has one of the world's best-known ancient civilizations. However, the former Egyptian Museum was built over 100 years ago and has had few upgrades since then. It didn't even have air conditioning. The Grand Egyptian Museum is a great leap forward, both as a tourist attraction and as a conservation effort. The Grand Egyptian Museum, which has been under construction since 2012, is the largest archaeological museum in the world. Between the main complex and the surrounding grounds, the museum takes up around 480,000 square meters and houses some of Egypt's most precious treasures. In fact, the museum will exhibit around 50,000 artifacts from throughout Egypt's long history. Collections will be relocated from museums in Cairo, Luxor, the Nile Delta, Alexandria, and many other significant locations around Egypt. The main attraction, however, will be the full collection from Tutankhamun's tomb, including the child pharaoh's solid gold coffin. The project has not been easy, though. With a cost of around $1 billion in a country where many people are still very poor, some Egyptians have wondered if it's worth it. And the project has been delayed repeatedly, most recently because of the coronavirus pandemic. However, the government of Egypt has announced that the museum will be completed in mid-2021.